The phrase empty your mind carries with it a kind of mystery that makes people stop and think. On the surface, it feels like a very simple piece of advice, but as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that those three words are far more powerful than they appear. The story presented here is not just about calming the mind or practicing stillness. It is about reshaping the way we live, how we handle change, and how we grow as individuals. The invitation to empty your mind is an invitation to let go of the unnecessary weight we all carry in the form of assumptions, judgments, rigid beliefs, and past experiences that no longer serve us. The story begins with the classic image of a teacher pouring tea into a student's cup. At first, the act seems ordinary, but then the cup begins to overflow. The student points out that the cup is already full, and the teacher explains that the mind works in exactly the same way. The cup is already filled to the brim, nothing new can be poured in. In other words, if your mind is crowded with preconceptions and biases, you will never be able to learn or experience something fresh. This is the heart of the lesson. To gain wisdom, you first need to create space for it. From a layperson's perspective, this makes immediate sense. Think about how hard it is to focus on a new task. When your brain is full of distractions, maybe you are trying to learn a new skill at work, but you keep replaying an argument you had earlier, or you are caught up worrying about whether you will succeed. The new information has no space to land because your mind is already cluttered. The act of emptying your mind is like clearing your desk before starting a new project. It is a simple yet profound preparation that allows you to fully engage with the present. From a more technical standpoint, psychology explains this phenomenon through concepts like cognitive bias, mental rigidity, and confirmation bias. The human brain tends to process information in ways that confirm what it already believes. This means that even when faced with new ideas, our minds often twist them to fit our old narratives. In a sense, most of us are walking around with overflowing cups. We're so convinced of what we already know that we leave no room for true learning. Emptying the mind, then, is not about forgetting everything but about loosening the grip of these biases, so that new perspectives can actually take root. The story offers a striking metaphor with water. When you empty your mind, you become like water, formless, adaptable, able to fit into any container. This metaphor has both poetic and practical weight. Water is gentle, yet over time it can carve through rock. It flows around obstacles. It does not resist, yet it finds its way forward. To live with an empty mind is to embody these same qualities. It is not about being passive, but about being open, adaptable, and resilient. In a world that changes rapidly, these qualities are not just philosophical ideals, they are survival skills. Imagine for a moment two people facing the same challenge at work. One is rigid, convinced that their way is the only way, unwilling to let go of old habits. The other is open, curious, willing to listen and learn. Even if both face setbacks, the second person will adapt more quickly, find solutions more easily, and grow stronger through the experience. This is the practical power of an empty mind. It does not cling to the past. It responds to the present. The story also emphasizes the weight of ego. Much of what fills our mental cup is our attachment to being right, to proving ourselves, to holding on to the image we have built of who we are. This ego-driven fullness keeps us from receiving anything new. For example, in conversations, many people listen not to understand, but to reply. Their minds are already filled with what they want to say, so they cannot truly hear the other person. Emptying the mind means setting aside the ego long enough to actually listen, to see things as they are instead of as we assume them to be. On a neurological level, this process of emptying is closely tied to neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. A flexible mind can form new neural pathways, allowing learning and creativity to flourish. But when the mind is crowded with repetitive thoughts and rigid beliefs, it reinforces the same old pathways, leaving little room for growth. Emptying the mind creates the conditions for neuroplasticity to thrive. It is like pruning a tree. By cutting back what is no longer useful, you allow new branches to grow stronger. The story pushes us to consider what it means to carry unnecessary baggage. Every person has memories of failures, regrets, or labels that weigh them down. Maybe someone was told as a child that they were not good at math, and decades later, that belief still limits them. Maybe someone failed once in business and carries the fear of failure into every new attempt. These old stories fill the cup, leaving no space for fresh experiences. Emptying the mind is an act of release, letting go of what no longer defines you. It is not about erasing the past, but about refusing to let the past dictate the present. From a motivational perspective, this lesson is transformative because it shifts the focus from what we cannot control to what we can. We cannot stop the world from changing. We cannot erase every hardship we have endured, but we can choose what we hold on to. We can decide to empty the cup so that new opportunities have space to enter. This is why the story calls it powerful, because the act of emptying gives us back our freedom. Think about the role of fear. Fear often fills the mind, crowding out possibilities. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. These fears make us cling to what is safe and familiar, even when it no longer serves us. But when you empty your mind, fear loses its grip. Instead of approaching life with hesitation, you approach it with curiosity. Instead of seeing obstacles as threats, you see them as chances to learn. That shift in mindset can completely change the trajectory of someone's life. Another important point the story makes is that emptying the mind is not a one-time event. Just as a cup can be refilled, our minds naturally gather clutter again and again. The key is to make it a practice. Some people find this through meditation, where the goal is not to stop thinking, but to let thoughts pass without clinging to them. Others do it through journaling, releasing their thoughts onto paper, so the mind can breathe. Even pausing in the middle of a hectic day to take a deep breath and let go of unnecessary tension is an act of emptying. The story also speaks to creativity. Many of the greatest breakthroughs in art, science, and innovation have come not from holding tightly to old ideas, but from letting them go. When the mind is too full, creativity suffocates. But in moments of emptiness, when you are relaxed, when you are not forcing an answer, new ideas often emerge. That is why people sometimes find solutions in the shower, on a walk, or just before sleep. The empty spaces allow creativity to rise. Consider how this applies to relationships as well. When you carry grudges or assumptions about how someone will act, you interact with them through the filter of the past. The relationship becomes trapped in old patterns. But if you empty your mind, approaching each interaction as fresh, you give the relationship space to grow. Instead of repeating the same arguments, you create room for new understanding. Emptying the mind in this context is an act of love and renewal. From a scientific perspective, the stress response system plays a role here. When the mind is cluttered, the amygdala triggers constant signals of stress and fear. This keeps the body in a heightened state of tension, which over time drains energy and harms health. Emptying the mind activates the prefrontal cortex, part of the brain responsible for higher reasoning and problem solving. This shift reduces stress, improves focus, and allows for more rational decision-making. So, the practice of emptying the mind is not just a spiritual idea, but also a physiological tool for health and performance. The story is inspiring because it reminds us that emptiness is not a loss. It is a possibility. An empty room is not useless. It is full of potential. You can turn it into a sanctuary, a place of work, a place of gathering. Similarly, an empty mind is not a blank void. It is the most fertile ground for growth. When you let go of the noise, you create space for clarity, creativity, and peace to enter. This perspective challenges a common misconception. Many people think that holding on tightly, whether to knowledge, to routines, or to control, is the best way to succeed. But the story shows that true strength comes from flexibility. Just as water adapts without losing itself, an empty mind can flow through life's challenges without breaking. It can bend without being destroyed, change without losing integrity. That is the paradox of emptiness. By being nothing fixed, it becomes everything possible. For those seeking motivation, the practical takeaway is clear. If you want to grow, succeed, and find peace, you must be willing to let go. You must empty your mind of the clutter that no longer serves you. This means questioning your limiting beliefs, setting aside your ego, releasing your fears, and creating space for something new. It means approaching life not with a cup that is already overflowing, but with one that is open and ready to be filled. When we look at the way the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the message is not about abandoning thought, but about transforming it. The mind should be like a tool, something we use rather than something that controls us. When it is too full, the tool becomes dull, heavy, unmanageable. But when we empty it, sharpen it, and clear it, it becomes precise and powerful. The story is a call to take ownership of that process, to cultivate a mind that is open, adaptable, and alive to the present moment.